Eugenics. How does this play a part in it? Well, eugenics, before we go there, I forgot to tell y'all something. So, right here, you have the Union of the African Association with the Royal Geographical Society of London. Well, at the time he was president of British eugenics, Charles Darwin's son, he also was the president of the Royal Geographical Society. A lot of people like, what is the Royal Geographical Society, Chief? Well, the Royal Geographical Society um, is originated from something called the African Association. June 9th, 1788. It is called the Discovery, the Age of Exploration of Africa. At this time, Europeans had no knowledge of the interior parts of Africa. So they created a commission in London to go into the interior parts and find Timbuktu. Now, this African, what's important? Why is this important? Because in 1832, the African Association would join union with the Royal Geographical Society of London. Charles Darwin's son is going to run this while he's running eugenics. Now, what this got to do with Pan-Africans? Hold on now. Because on September the 24th, 1987, Henry Sylvester Williams, who they call the father of Pan-Africanism, he founded the first Pan-African Conference. He was funded by people out of Canada. We'll talk about that later. It's in my book. But this guy, on this day, Williams had been instrumental in founding the what? The African Association. After the scramble of Africa, the response, the counterattack to the scramble of Africa was Williams creating the African Association, which had already been created. It's coming out the same bloodline. One of the most instrumental people in this, the first one was a guy by the name Johannes Bogart, which is going to be related to W.E. Du Bois Bogart. That's why he's going to, Henry is going to extend invitation to W. Du Bois. And in 1919, Joel Springer will put the money up for W. Du Bois to run it. Bloodlines. Now, we're in America with it. Franz Boas is seen as the father of anthropology. We back with this sign. How they're going to write over it. And they're going to tell us. Now, we're tying it in with Africa. So I just brought you in with the Pan-Africans. They're coming under an organization. They're coming under an organization that has ties with colonization and even through science. We're going to show you how they're going to connect it with science. Well, here's the mastermind, Franz Boas. He is seen as the father of American anthropology. Boas believed each culture was separated and unique. In Europe, there were several highly regarded people such as Bronislaw Malinowski. Boas was a specialist in what? North American Indian cultures and language. But he was, in addition, the organizer of a profession and the great teacher of a number of scientists who developed anthropology in the United States. Al Kroeber, Ruth Benedict, Margaret Mead, Melville Herskovitz, Edward Sapir. Check. Let's walk. Now, the early anthropological foundation for much of the knowledge about Africa in modern academic field include African studies. This is very important. We're about to start sitting down on our punches. Or the European exploration of Africa, the transatlantic slave trade, by explorers and missionaries, as well as the colonial scramble of Africa by European imperialists. I told you, all this is going to have something to do with it. Now, following African independence, many colonial staff in Europe and Africa became the staff in emerging African studies organizations. Okay? And on February 25th, 1963, Melville Herskovitz, the Wati Uwish anthropologist, who was what? The father of African studies in the U.S. Why is it a white tea man that father of anthropology? I mean, the father of African studies. like I said, I challenge any scholar to bring me a person that said Negroes in America had a connection to Africa. It wasn't us, it was them, and they're gonna connect it through science. We're gonna walk.
And Chief,
Yes, sir.
and Chief, man, real quick on that standpoint, my minor in college was African American Studies, right? We were
Okay.
never taught that. We were never taught that. We were never exposed to who that was, any of that. So I found it very interesting. I just had to say that real
Oh,
quick.
we about to go through that then, because we about to go through. It's the beginning, the middle, and everything. How did he become who he became? Let's walk. So remember, Franz Boas, the father of anthropology, and then this is the guy who's gonna. And this is coming out the Haaretz. This coming out in overseas in Israel. Yeah, this Dave Mill. He is the what they call him, the father of African studies in the U.S. Can I get an amen? Now we go to the myth of the Negro past by Melville Hercules. Through historical relationship between the present day Negroes of the United States of America, amidst of no debate, there is little scientific knowledge of what has happened to this African cultural heritage in the New World. They can't find no culture in the New World. So he's gonna set out on creating this tie between us and Africa. At this time, you had the repatriation movements going on. Back to Africa still was in effect. And you had people like Garvey and other people who were speaking out about going. But you had people like Du Bois who was funded under other philanthropist money and the Pan-African Forum to keep people here. Then you had Booker T. His form of Pan-Africanism was to train the person up to basically, enough education just to get the jobs done and stay in the slave position, whereas Du Bois with the talented 10 mindset. But let's walk. So there is little scientific knowledge of what happened to this African culture and heritage in the New World. This is what he said. So he's going to create it. So he's gonna he said there is authors, whether lay scholarly, not only unencumbered by the first-hand experience with African civilizations involved, but the majority of them know or at all events utilized but few. If any of the works wherein the cultures are described, while such works are cited, documentation and commonly the older sources, which today are what are of little scientific value. Wow. This is what's going to get him. So it's not there. We see it's not there. There's no connection with us in Africa. So he's going to create it. What's going to be his tool? Something we talked about all night, anthropology. So in the book, Melville Hercules and the Racial Politics of Knowledge, page 29, check, anthropology help to strengthen the cultural interpretation of mental differences and undermine the racial interpretation. In April 1923, while putting the finished touches on his dissertation, Hercules submitted a fellow application to the NRC. NRC is a sister company or lower branch to the eugenics movement. And the problem of physical psychology, he wanted to join the anthropometric class, but he never went through anthropometric even at Columbia. So everybody was wondering why he wanted to pick that as to major in. But they found out that it was influenced by Boas, the father of anthropology, and the powers at the NRC, this sister company or subgroup to eugenics, who wanted to support studies in the biological, not the cultural aspects of race. Thus, the NRC interest in biological studies of race was the purpose of investigating race-related social issues and immigration altered the direction of Hercules' career, because he wanted to do it on on cultural. Whereas Du Bois, when we see him with the Philadelphia experience, he's gonna do it, and they broke him down, saw their strengths through the Philadelphia experience, where he's gonna do it through biology. and then we're gonna see Booker T and the syphilis, joint pushed by his name will come to me, the guy who did the YMCA, Rosenberg. I think it's Rosenberg. Yeah. And that's how that play is gonna go. But they did it biologically. Now, Boas responded to the eugenics move against cultural anthropology by using the NRC program to butter his own interpretive position. He encouraged his students to participate in a coordinated attack on the problem of cultural factor and racial differences. So what's going to happen? Well, they're going to have the study of African American migrants tested intelligence. And Herkovich, his study of African Americans, all help undermine the previous assumptions about race. Now, Herkovich revealed that his very concept of race discussing Americans of African descent. These studies generated by traditionalist attack on culture. Now, they will promote immigrant. Now, let me come down here. Now, during the 1920s, biological determinists led by members of the Galton Society, the environmental determinists led by Boas, competed to dictate the direction of what? Anthropological studies. So they competing. Who gonna win? Is it gonna be biological or is it gonna be cultural? What's gonna be more effective? Until the mid-1920s, the biological determinists exercised a major influence in anthropology. After that, cultural anthropology were in the absent but faced significant resistance from eugenicists and bioanthropologists who relied on simple Mendelism and biometrics. So they put a play together. In order to do this, they were going to need an anthropological background for his study. So in 24, Herkovich applied for additional funding from the NRC and from the International Education Board, Rockefeller now. And by the year, John D. Rockefeller, for 5 months research trip from Europe, Herkovich proposed to visit a major anthropological collection with significant African holdings and meet with prominent physical anthropologists and ethnologists who specialized in Africa. And so now it begins. Now it begins this play on turning on Africa, like the word you used earlier, Africanizing us. Check. So let's walk. So Herkovich. Now, hold on. In order for him to do this, Herkovich, his two agents believe, boom, 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 boom. All right, well, let's push up. So Herkovich, for him to do this attack, his research on African Americans, he proposed a study of Harlem blacks. He later broadened his research to include blacks from West Virginia, Washington, D.C., ascertained the degree to which African Americans was the product of mixed racial heritage. He would obtain genealogies and physical measurements of African Americans to determine whether they were a race according to tradition definition of race, that is biological category of people and those little physical variations between members of groups. He compared his own measurements of Black Americans with those done by other white Americans, Black Americans, Europeans, Native Americans, West Africans. Herkovich expected to find significant physical variation between. He believed that Black Americans represented a mixture of European and African heritage. So this is where these stories are going to come from. Y'all, we just getting started. Watch how it ends and watch who's going to help him. Second, Herkovich planned to use anthropometric as a tool of the scientific racist anthropologists to test their belief to race-determined behavior like Boas. Herkovich believed that environment, not race, was key to behavior. By understanding, now watch this here, by understanding race study Michigan, he tackled a subject that had been clouded by racism assumptions for generations. Now, we on the move. We almost done. Now, he went to Harvard. Anthropologists M. Tarver severely criticized the council writing, and the research received $7,000 for the study of race mixture. So now he's starting. I can't hear you.
I was saying, hey, 7,000 during that time period.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, for some
That's a lot of money. Yeah. And it is specifically for the study of race mixture. And he's gonna come back, and they're gonna come back and get more money. But Boaz, first graduated student, were all upset that they were not doing. Apparently, the pressure on Whistler from Boaz and others succeeded the freeing up funds for non-members. So now the funding was spread around through his other proteges, but now most of it is going in the direction of Africanizing the Negroes in America in this cultural study of America. Now, in order to proceed on his research, he needed to make contacts with, guess who, fam? Various Black communities. He got the funding now. Then he started to receive an increasing pay of $175 a month for the second year, $200 a month for the third year, and 5-year increase within June after 1925. All right. And now to lock it in, he got the funding, he got the backing, he got the politics, and now he need Black community. He need people from the Black community to get him his Black card. So what he gonna do is the eugenics belief, the NRC, Boaz and his students led to a heated debate on Hercules' proposal, finally arranged after Boaz attacked allied NRC members. Now, Hershkovich is going to navigate two scholars and supporters of eugenics and a member of the Galton Society, another people who was funding them. While conducting his research, he also taught anthropology courses at Columbia University. They said an unpaid lecturer from 1924 to 1920. Sound like Elon and those unpaid. Anyway, he say also he needed the assistant help with the measurements. Boaz introduced Hershkovich to several people. Now, one of the most famous one, you got a librarian on 135th Street in New York, public library. Soon became the Schomburg collection. Check. Now, one of the central meeting places for Harlem Black community, Peterson introduced Hershkovich to members of New York Black community. This is where it's all gonna change. Now, the YT people is finna bring this play to these Black missionaries as they'll bring it back to us. Now, this is how they're gonna, because you said out of Africa theory and the colonization, this is how they're gonna do it. So he introduced them to some friends in the community. Abraham Harris became a close friend. During 1923 and 24, he made important contacts on NAACP, and the Urban League also met with him. Walter White of the NAACP, Paul Robeson, Hershkovich attended meeting with editorial officers of the Crisis, who W. Du Bois wrote for. 1924, his contacts, he met with Alan Locke, Howard University professor, who was in New York preparing the special. Damn, why I keep doing the issue of the survey of the new Negro. Now he got all of these our people behind him. Is there a racial psychology, a civilization of Africa? Now, both Boaz and Hershkovich promoted, we're almost done, the training of Black anthropologists. So they're gonna promote the idea of training Black anthropologists. Now, who could assist Hershkovich to study while preparing for an academic career? Now, Hershkovich employed a Black assistant, Louis C. King, based on Alan Locke recommendation, Alan Harris, and the most famous, popular Zora Neale Hurston. Beautiful Zora Neale Hurston, but she would be used as a pawn and a powerful piece on the board to Africanize the culture of our people, because she can come in and be us and know us and go back and took it back to them, such as things like hoodoo, her work on the Clotilda ship. These are things that Boaz, a book called His Eyes Are Watching Her, Friends Boaz and our sister Zora Neale Hurston. Great book, y'all go check that out. So he got his connections now. Through the broad study, Herkovitz proposed large anthropometric measurements of genealogies at black colleges. So now he going around the black college. He want to know if you know your genealogy, and then he want to measure your skull. Alan Locke got him in Howard University. Now he was able to look forward to studying and correlating standings and psychology interest tests with various anthropometric Negro traits. Now, with the approval, Herkovitz wrote to President Stanley Dirk, who was the last white president in Howard, and he ran into a little problem up there. A lot of people wasn't okay what he was doing. They felt like it was racist. What are you doing? But he had the connections to get him through. Now, the main purpose of the anthropometric research was to determine the degree of which African Americans were the product of African, European, or American Indian ancestry. So American Indian been on the, on the list. We just don't know that. We're not getting that in the history from John Henry Clark or no disrespect or none of the other elders. But in the time before then, we were on the list. If you're talking about American Indian, and they're talking about us, because at that time there was no word for Native American. So the U.S. Census indicated that 1870 to 1920, between 12 to 21% of Negro population with mulattoes. 1920 census putting figure at 15.9, according to most African Americans with mixed heritage and challenge notions of them members of unchanging biological war. Now, Herkovitz, he then compared his results to biometrics and the degree of African Americans were mixed with African, European, and American Indian descent, with the genealogy reported by the student subjects. Now, the students, when they come in and they're trying to find them, the students are using genealogy. This is something I always be trying to point out. I pointed it out in my book to let people know when they use science, we use genealogy. We had, like the brother brought out Alan Locke earlier, we had the stories in the Holt earlier. We had the stories in the oral histories and the obituaries and the family grave sites, so we can see the people. We know who's who. And he's coming looking for their genealogy. Now, Herkovitz method. Herkovitz, who played a key role in so Todd Wingate, who played a key role in Herkovitz method in carrying forth this study. He questioned the use of the measurements. He told Herkovitz, your plan for the NRC interests me very much. There's no doubt you should satisfy the body, but to sturdy enough think not to satisfy you. Thick lips, broad noses, or no critique of Negro blood, but only the type of Negro. So when you hear somebody say, oh, you got big lips, you got a big nose, you're African, they're not even understanding they're getting this from YT scientific racism. And that's the cold thing. Oh, you got broad lips and a big nose, and bam, this is Todd even had to tell him, hold on, bro, you might be going too far. You know what I'm saying? Like some of this shit you saying, like you might be going too far. I do not believe that you should expect the proposal to help scrap towards solution so-called Negro hybrid. Despite respect, tie, relationship, scholarship, Herkovitz rejected his friend's advice. He rejected it and said, I'm going to push my line. Unfortunately, several academic and popular writers, they began to, have a problem with this version that Herkovitz has come up with. I mean, ain't nobody in the world got it but him, and he's the first to say American Negroes have a culture, and this culture is in Africa, and it's in Africa. And he's tying us to Africa, and his lifelong work is to make sure he put us in Africa when he's done with us. Cool. So in his time, scholars went against him. The distorted version of Herkovitz's finding to a wide audience during the 1930s. The writers misinterpreted Herkovitz's conclusions and strengthened the notion that American Negroes formed a distinct racial group. in 31, Edwin Embry, president of the Rosenwald Foundation. Rosenwald was the guy I was talking about earlier with the YMCA, who Booker T founded, and they did the syphilis joint through. Now, he published Brown America, a story of a new race, based on the large part of results Hershey studies. Embry announced the formation of a new brown-skinned race, a stewardship. Now, Woodson had a point. The result of physical anthropology revealed the approach that to highlight differences between blacks and whites. Now, boom. All right, let's move over here. So, Du Bois, he showered the book. So Hershkovitz brought out this work, and you had people like W. Du Bois. He showered the book, and the author with praise. Du Bois pronounced Hershkovitz as a real scientist, and he called the book the epic of making Hershkovitz. He continued, proves that the American Negro is a new definite group. All of that nonsense fostered by the United States Census as to mulattoes is swept away. That's what Du Bois said. Du Bois said, don't go by the census. Don't go by the genealogy. Don't go by what your grandma said. Listen to Hershkovitz. So they put him on a pedestal in the black community, NAACP. They are pushing him now. So now this theory is going to be attacked. Hershkovitz's conclusion that majority of African Americans were mixed race discredit the racist notion of mulattoes were preparing due to the supposed biology. Now, Du Bois' interest in fostering racial and cultural pride disposed him to favor Hershkovitz finding that African American blacks were a definite group. Now, let's watch this here. So what's going to happen? They're going to go down and do this study. Down 1927, Hershkovitz studied that anthropometric studies of black women at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama confirmed his results. Boas advised Hershkovitz, the evidence you need in order to conclude that generally true of African Americans, Boas told him that he would have to go down to the South. He would have to go research in the South. Before you come put that out, bro, you got to go down there to the South. So, Boas cautioned his former student overstanding conclusions. You do not have the right to claim more than that the American Negro has not high variability as much as suspected on the account of very great differences amount of white and blood Negro grouping. Hershkovitz accepted his mentor's advice. So they're going to go to the South. Now, he need this when he told him he moved to provide more evidence from the Deep South. Cool. So they're gonna get down to Mississippi. 171 families, 639 males. He reported that it appeared that the black belt population is no more Negroid than measured by me in the North during the early research. Oh yeah, well they're gonna come back and bust his ass on that because in 1940, August Meyer, he's gonna go to Tougaloo College in Mississippi, and he's gonna do genealogical study of black students and confirm that Meyer's genealogy of the students indicated a lower percentage of those unmixed African descents than Hershkovitz had did. The one major difference is that they indicated a much larger degree of American Indian heritage, 72% compared to 27% in Hershkovitz's study. So Hershkovitz put us at 27% Indian, but when they went down to Mississippi and asked them people, it was 72%. And the difference was attributed to the region studied by Hershkovitz and Meyer. But he said it didn't matter what he was at, black belt or not, you're going to be African. All right, cool. So Hershkovitz initially concluded only 20% of American Negroes were pure Negro based on the Howard research. Now, Howard is going to come back up in this. Zora Neale Hurston is going to take him to, it's going to take him to New York and also Howard University, West Virginia, among students where they found a total of 1,551 individual interviews. So she's going to help. But you had people in that time that came out, the conflicts and fusion coaches, special referee to Negro, Robert E. Parks. He's going to say, my own impression is that the amount, pick up the mic on this one, the amount of African tradition which the Negro brought to the United States was very small. In fact, there is every reason to believe, it seems to me, that the Negro, when he landed in the United States, left behind him almost everything but his dark complexion and his tropical temperament. And it is very difficult to find in the South anything that can be traced directly back to Africa. This does not mean that there's not a great deal of superstition, conjuring, root doctrine, and magic generally among Negroes in the United States. What it does mean is that superstitions we do find are those which might expect to grow anywhere among imaginative people living in intellectual twilight such as exists in isolation plantation of certain states. But Robert E. Park, Journal of the Negro, Volume 4. So you're going to get this African studies. They're going to tie in with the government now with something called the National Defense Act. And this was a recent dramatic emergence of tropical Africa center. Africa's going to become the center of the stage of international affairs. Has raised African studies, like my brother took, to a position of grave national concern. If the new African nations face the problem of adjusting responsibilities, independence on our side, we face equal problems meeting the responsibility. So what are they going to do? They're going to our critical need now is for a detailed understanding on these diverse nations. So they need a deeper understanding on Africa. The challenge of American leadership here is great. Ultimately, it must be the small core of scholars to have knowledge and understanding which the nation now needs. The form of select group whose members are clustered in small numbers, scattered universities, mission schools with for many years relative obscurity, they have pursued their studies of the African continent and its people. Now they say they have the right here 10 years ago higher education formal program of African studies and no more than a dozen senior scholars whose attention was focused on Africa in the past decade. Now, with the help of private foundations, missionary activity, and finally direct support from who? The federal government. And so Pan-Africanism, African studies, they're gonna finally get the support from the federal government. And they say that the government had nothing to do with this, YT people had nothing to do with this, or this was directly agenda or knowledge from people that look like us. No, they're going to be accessories to the crime, and we finna walk it down. So by 59, 7 university graduate degrees of African studies. Now, the founding of African Studies Association. Now, they celebrated their 5th anniversary, 1957, and who played a key role? The Carnegie Corporation. Allen Pfeiffer Corporation. That was only who was it? They only long constructed activity related to Africa, dating back to 1926 for American scholars concerned with the content. The concept of African American studies was first problematic, but in practice, it has created a new fruitful opportunities for interaction with colleges at home and abroad, stimulating the growth of maturity of African studies. So they're going to make it up. So they're going to have this body committee and the group involved to discuss. So they go to people to name who was influential in it. And right here, they was called African Studies Conference held at the Hotel Roosevelt, New York, March 22nd to the 24th in 57. And the function was decided whether or not on the organization should form to promote the serious study of Africa. So at this time, they ain't have it. The cost of the conference was paid generously by the Carnegie, $6,500. All right. Now, Melville Herskovich, anthropologist of Africa. He is the founder of the university program of African Studies in the United States. He won Anthropologist of the Year in 1962. Now, at this time, it was movements going on. Many black scholars attempted to organize unions of people of African descent in the tradition of Marcus Garvey, founder of modern African nationalism. In this country, new emphasis, they said, as Africanism grows out of the ferment, the recent months over black study programs with that there had been strong desire evidence among Negro students to gain a more than a distant familiarity with the African experience. Now, New York Times in the 70s, after they didn't put the money together in the 50s, put it together in the 60s, now in the 70s, they talking about that we are begging to know about our African side. Lord have mercy. They need to know of black heroes and of noble deeds of the black men. They need to know that black is beautiful, and that under the African sky, black people are proud ease at their blackness. This feeling of kinship of Africa was expressed last weekend at the second annual conference, Heritage, called the what? African Heritage Studies Association. Now, who is that? Who is that? As a result of racial and political disputes over exclusion from leadership positions of black academics, ACA leaders ties to the U.S. intelligence military, ASA split in 1968. The Black Caucus of ASA, led by who? John Henry Clark, who founded the African Heritage Studies Association. So the ACAS is the African Studies Association. So they split in 1968, which means he was a part of it. So just like the father of Gullah Geechee, just like Zora Neale Hurston, well, our dear brother, this is why we know our dear brother, Dr. John Henry Clark, because he's going to be the vehicle to bring the Africanization from our people directly from the father of African studies, as he worked side by side and even created a branch that said we should tell our own story. But he still had to go through him. Leonard Jeffries, shout out to Leonard Jeffries, man, much respect. But Leonard Jeffries also was a co-founder of that organization. This is coming from their website. The organization grew out of the protest 1968 African Studies Association meeting in Los Angeles. African descendant scholars demanded changes in the ACA, Afrocentric approaches to African studies, and its marginalization of African descent scholars due to the failure of the ASA to reform itself. The African descendant scholars occupied 1969 ASA annual meeting in Montreal with the support of scholars around the globe. And they said it's important for them to tell their own story now. Well, New York Times, in 1970, that same year, Dr. John Henry Clark was interviewed. And he emphasized, however, that his objective was not to restore in a strict sense of back to Africa movement of the kind of the late Marcus Garvey. He learned from the predecessors before him that, starting with the AME Church, starting with James Fortin and Richard Allen now, where they tried to help out the American Colonization Society to send people to Sierra Leone or Liberia, and they didn't want to go. He learned from Garvey experiences, and he came up with Back to Africa in Spirit. So he said that most of us will probably not go back to Africa. He said, except in mind, spirit, and interest. So he wanted to keep the body here, but take the brain to Africa. He's going to have to create a curriculum to push that narrative. And that's why he became the greatest to do it, as he was in bed and funded by said people that we just went through. Now, you got the Royal Society, the oldest national scientific institution in the world. We'll come over here to their website, Ancient DNA. Now, they talk about this ancient DNA being researched in fields including archaeology, anthropology, evolutionary biology, combined with developments of molecular biology in the mid-1980s, including the chain reaction, novel, and also mitochondrial DNA.